Head. How's that?
Roger, I think we're back on. Yep, Southern Porch is live now. Actually, we're getting notifications today, so it's good. No, I appreciate the kind words, and you contributed a lot to it. It helped out quite a bit.
Not really.
But no, you did. It's always fun to talk to some of these groups, and
Yeah, you did a great job. Great job. I'm telling you, you really connected with those people, and they responded well, and I think they left the event in a different place, which was impressive. And I think that's probably the direction of speaking is that when people come in, hopefully they get informed and they get their mind going. And I saw lots of people in that group's mind kickstart and get going. And I was impressed. And so I wanted to share that with you. I didn't get a chance. You were conversing with someone when I left, but I said, I'll see him on Tuesday. So I said, I'll wait and let you know then. But I was impressed. I thought that was a great job. Very very natural, very low key, and really grabbed the people. And what looked like it was only going to take about 5 or 10 minutes, in my mind, took over an hour. It was incredible. Good job.
Thanks, sir. So, what are we going to talk about today? What do you think the world's got on its mind? And
the one thing that's got me, Rick, is change. That one of the things I noticed is that as you grow older, things change. What used to be is not what is going to be. And another thing that I look at is the idea that change is not as immediate as when you were younger. When you were younger, when you wanted this to change, it seemed like in a microsecond it changed. If you were going this direction, you could go this direction. Kind of like if you look at a car, and all you do is, if they had a great steering wheel in the car, you barely touched it. It moved over to the next lane. But what I've noticed is our cars change. And so that even though we had a great steering mechanism that moved the car very quickly from one lane to the other, it takes more effort and a longer time to get the car from one lane to another now. And so probably one of the hard things in that is the concept, Rick, of not giving up. I think when you get used to this is the way it operates, this is the way it works, this is what's going to happen, it's going to happen in this time, changes. And you've got to be willing to adjust to that change. And probably one of the biggest elements of that is patience. You really got to be patient with it. I think there's a tendency sometimes, since the car is not moving at the way it used to, you just pull it over the side, get out. So I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm not going that route. And because of that, we miss out on a lot of opportunities. And kind of what I think we miss out on is what's next, what's really next for us. And another thing that's a killer in that is comfort. We get used to driving in a lane. We get used to operating our lives in a particular way. And so we just stay in that lane. And so the car doesn't move when you steer. Fine, I'm just going to stay in this lane. I'm just going to do this. This is what I like anyway. And again, the bad thing about that is it's not, the car's not taking us, or our life is not taking us the direction to the destination we were meant to go in. And I really admire people who are patient. They just say, I was watching Ellen DeGeneres the other day, and she said she was talking about her role in the movie Find Dory. And one of Dory, the fish's favorite or famous quote was, keep swimming. keep swimming, keep swimming. And she said, that's also my philosophy in life. There was a time when things did not go well. I couldn't find a job. Things weren't working. And in my mind, I was thinking, I'm just going to give up. And I thought, boy, there it is. And, kind of nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to eat some worms kind of mindset. And she said, no, I had that dory. I'm going to keep swimming. I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to keep out there. I'm going to keep going. And now she runs the largest talk show in America. Wow. Who would have ever thought? Number one, that Oprah would step down. And number two, that she would be the next new Oprah in America. I certainly would not have guessed that. And so that is kind of what was rolling in my mind that I wanted to bring to the porch today. What do you think about that?
Well, I think one of the challenges we have is, you're right. I do think as we get older, change is harder. And the fact that change seems to happen so quickly in really every aspect of life.
But don't you remember in the 20s, when you were getting out of high school and getting through college and stuff, that thing just pow, 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 pow. And your life could take a 180 direction in just a second. It was just wild how things just drastically changed in a microsecond. But I've not noticed that as I've gone older. I could do the same things in what I saw as the same way, and then kind of my life doesn't move. It doesn't give me. I can say, well, when I was young, I said I want to do this. I did it, and it seemed like the door opened. And a real good example of that, Rick, was when I was accepted into seminary for an education in New Orleans. Now, number one, never been to New Orleans in my life. Number two, I was living in Atlanta and had a pretty good job. But in the less than 30 days, I can vividly remember this. I was through with the job. I had gone to New Orleans. I had gotten a job in a totally different area and started going to school and living in a dorm in a town I'd never been. It was amazing. And it happened, I remember, in less than 30 days. And then when I graduated from seminary, I got a job in Augusta, Georgia, and started work in Augusta, Georgia in less than 30 days. I got the call, talked to people, did the interview, went, boom, I had the job. It's like, wow, this is amazing. And I thought that's the way life was going to be. But that's not how life is anymore. I found it.
Well, but, okay, so how old were you when you made that decision?
29, okay. 30, right in there. Yeah.
And so you're in a good job. You're in an exciting city. So what happened in life where you decided, I'm going to go to seminary in New Orleans?
Yeah, I had graduated from college. I was working in Atlanta in the trucking industry. Why? Because that's where I found a job.
Yeah.
And I was looking and saying, is this all there is to life? Is this, I was just so miserable. I was very miserable in Atlanta. And I just, was looking for next. Mm-hmm. And then the opportunity came up to be a counselor and go to a Christian school, and which appealed to me. But a piece of me said, because I was divorced, that's never going to happen. And I drove in there and they said, sign up. Yep. And if you're willing to go and do the work. And so there was 3 years of my life sitting in New Orleans, which was an awesome experience. But, you're right. I was in my early 30s when that happened.
And then after you finished the seminary, you went to Augusta, Georgia as a counselor? Or?
Yeah. I got a full-time job as a counselor in an adolescent unit for a psych hospital in Augusta, Georgia. And I mean, I drove in, I got an apartment, and the next day I was there full time working a job, which I worked for a couple of years, and then went on from there. But it just, and then that was a wild story because I had a friend, an old friend, who called me from Augusta, Georgia, and said, "Are you still interested in doing counseling?" And I said, "Yeah, I just finished my degree. I would love to do counseling." And they said, "Well, the hospital here just ran an ad in the paper and is looking for an adolescent therapist." Woo, buddy! I called them, and again, in less than 30 days, I was sitting in Augusta, Georgia, and I just made my head swim. And so it kind of went along like that. But as, again, time went by and I got older, and I found Greenville, South Carolina. I said, "But this works," and got married and settled down. And I've been here since 1990. It's a great place, and I'm glad I'm here. I have no desire. The changing lane, and boy, I was a lane changer for a while, living in Oklahoma, then living in Illinois, then living in Atlanta, then living in New Orleans, then living in Augusta, then living in Athens. And finally I ended up in Greenville and said, "Man, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of all this changing. I'm going to settle in."
Well, and there's something to be said about establishing roots sometime in life, but I think you're right. I think as you are in your 20s and 30s, that is a time where life is going to bring a lot of opportunities to you and bring a lot of opportunities for changes, whether it be college, jobs, people you meet in your life.
Uh-huh.
And then again, we start hopefully getting in some sense of stability because during that whole time, you were divorced and you didn't get married until you got back to Greenville. And there is something to be said about being single and having those opportunities come up.
Right. And it's real interesting how back in the day, I just really didn't even think about single.
Mm-hmm.
I was really focused on becoming a counselor. I was miserable in Atlanta. Yeah. I had gotten a degree. It wasn't I grew up in the generation that believed if you got a college degree, man, it was made. They were just waiting at the door to hand you a
big paycheck and
a paycheck and a job, and here you go. And so I graduated. I kind of like, I'm ready. I'm ready. I said, I've got my degree, and nothing happened. And then the job opened up. It got me down to Atlanta. And I thought, well, now Atlanta, man, this is a big metro area, and it's in the South, and woohoo, buddy. And I thought, goodness gracious, I've fallen into a hole. Oh, it was just, I don't know if that's the most miserable I've been, but it's certainly the top 5 miserable times I've ever had. And I thought I'll never escape. And then, boy, and literally in a day, everything changed. And
you had the courage, though, to make that change, because a lot of times, like you said, a lot of times people get in a sense of security, whether the security is bringing happiness or discomfort, is security. And
yes.
They don't want to get out of that secure blanket. And sometimes, again, I think that's the theme of life sometimes is, do you take calculated risks in life to accomplish the goals that you set for yourself? Or if you're not happy in a specific situation, do you stay unhappy because of the security, knowing what you're in, versus saying, I'm going to take a calculated risk and get out of that to maybe find something better?
Yeah, I think it just seemed like back in the day, the opportunities seemed greater.
Mm-hmm.
It was like choose from the top 10. And as you get older, well, then there's only 9, and then there's only 8, and then you wake up one day and the number's 0. You go, oh, I want the opportunity in there. I'm looking for next. I'm not saying it's not there. I think what I'm finding is timing. That in the past, if I wanted to take a different choice, make a different choice, choices were available. And as you grow older, I think your choices are limited. Sometimes by you, like what you're talking about, And sometimes I think it's just life that the doors are not as open as they used to be because of age and how that works out. And so, and I think what we're really covering today is about you yourself not getting in your way. I think that's one thing I want to share with our crowd is I don't want you to get in your way. And I see as people get older in our generation and other generations, they become impatient.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that is it's hard to acquire. It's hard to acquire. It's to acquire patience. But as you get older and you are looking for options, I think one of the key elements to options as you get older is patience. I think being able to, like I said with Ellen DeGeneres, keep swimming,
Mm-hmm.
keep swimming, keep swimming, and that transition psychologically, emotionally is real hard. It's really hard. I mean, I think people are like, wait a minute, I'm still me. In fact, I have more depth, more experience, more intelligence to add to the party, and less offers to use it, which can just drive you crazy.
Mm-hmm. So, what do we share with our audience as far as when they catch themselves growing a little bit older, but learning how to be patient and wait for those doors to open at the right time instead of trying to kick them in?
Well, Rick, one of the things I think is very important is the crowd you run with. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed a lot of with people is as they get older, one of the choices they make is to isolate. That they're very involved in their 30s, and then they kind of go into their shell, their little place, and they kind of hide there. They don't interact with people. They don't get involved in groups. And so they indirectly become isolated. And so probably the first step to helping at later in life options is community. When you're connected to community. Right. And I think that people who connect to community, the community helps them be patient. I think it takes a little bit of the sting out of impatience. That when you're impatient, things aren't working. Oh, that emotionally just tears you up, and you just want to. And you've been encouraged as you've grown up to move it faster, better, greater, go. And when you're out of that, it's kind of like, I'm just going to roll up by myself and maybe lick my wounds. Mm-hmm. Emotionally by myself. And we don't realize that when you move yourself away from community, you move yourself away from support, and you also move yourself away from caring, for being cared for. And I think that down the road is a admirable trait, is having the trait of the ability to be cared for.
And so the challenges I see it, and we've spoken about this a little bit, but the idea that, again, when technology becomes our friend, but when also technology becomes somewhat of the antagonist towards how we do things, is, and we spoke about that a little bit Friday, but that's a challenge we're having.
That's what opened my mind to that.
Yeah.
The discussion you had Friday, I was like, yeah, that's it. That was a key element, how technology enhanced isolation, but then isolation caused all kinds of problems. I had never thought of that, and I went like, man, Rick is in the zone, boy. This works. I love that. It really got my mind thinking, and how, hard it is for young people, again, unknowingly getting into the technology of it all. And I was seeing a post on Facebook that said, I know you have 1,000 Facebook friends, but how many real friends do you have? And it said at the end, it said, Facebook friends were just like Monopoly money.
Right.
It's there, but it's worthless. And you can have 1,000 friends, but that's worthless. It's the connection you make.
Right. And interpersonal, no, I was just going to say, but you're right, exactly right. But interpersonal relationships regarding connection does require connecting face to face, voice to voice. And, I shared,
and face to face is painful, Rick. That's one thing you got to. People kind of act like, oh yeah, I got to talk to people. Well, that's hard. It's hard. But see, if I'm on a electronic device and I don't like what you're saying, or I don't like how you're typing out, I can just delete you. I'm not going to talk to them anymore. Which is much harder when it's a real person and we've had a real conversation. And I've kind of put myself out there and you've put yourself out there. That's a whole different environment. And like you said in your speech on Friday, we've got a whole generation that's losing that.
Unfortunately, they've lost it. No, I'm serious.
It's so hard to hear.
Yeah,
it's so hard to hear.
What I shared on Friday was one of the things that amazes me is when I walk into class and every one of those students are on their phone in their own world, not speaking to another student in the class. And I've seen it where we've gone a whole semester, 15 weeks, and they still don't know each other's names. And even and when I try to, quote unquote, force them to connect with each other through projects and groups and so forth, it's just like you said, it's like, ooh, this is hard. I don't want to do this.
Yeah. I'll tell you what amazed me. One time, Rick, I went to get a hamburger at Fuddruckers here. Mm-hmm. And there was a young girl in front of me in a conversation with people and typing on her phone with one hand. So she was typing, carrying a conversation on one hand, and talking to people and getting ready to get a hamburger all at the same time. I was like, how did anybody how did you get that done? And she didn't even break a sweat. It didn't even seem odd to her. She just kept on and with ease. And I realized, boy, that it would be hard if I was just carrying on a conversation, a real conversation with someone right there and moving in line to get a hamburger. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could have as smoothly operated as she did. And I thought, boy, I am way out of it, boy, because I'm an old hunt and peck and the dog kind of person. And I think people, again, a piece of what you're talking about is the ease in which that's done. That just woke me up to a lot of things I don't get because I don't have the ease in it.
Yeah. And then we extrapolate that out and we're saying, okay, so that's the millennial generation. We understand that, that's what they grew up with. But then going back to what you were saying as far as being hard and easy, and, we both see couples that are in crisis and we're talking about communications and I would guarantee you these are the same couples that will go out to dinner and be on their phones the whole
yeah. Yeah, they have a whole lot. They have through the years of being mm-hmm. married, they have slowly moved away from each other. And that they're living two separate lives and do not want to invest in what it would take to bring it back together. Yeah. It's like being married is not easy.
So, right. So, as we're talking about how hard it is to change, but we're going to have to accept change and going back to the original concept that you came up with on Southern Porches and now Southern Porch Life, which is a great concept, is, what happened in the days when we did use the front porch as an opportunity to get to know your neighbors, get to talk about the world, get to solve all the world's problems with people that you do, and you can look at them in the eyes and respected each other's positions. And then, we spoke about the transition that happened. Air conditioning came about. People no longer wanted to be on the front porch, so front porches started going away. In fact, the design was, houses are now designed where you get people in the house as quickly as possible. And if you want to spend any time outdoors, then you now start moving everybody to the backyard. And so then we started having back porches built. But still, they were usually, today they're still closed in, or you could have them air conditioned or a big fan out there. But where I'm going with this is from that world to we're seeing now our connection with people is, like you said, through the technology. And yet, what are we losing through this? And that is the ability to learn how to look somebody in the eye when you speak with them. That is the ability to truly have interpersonal relationships that are built on connection of that face to face. And I would, this would be the challenge I would encourage everyone to start looking at, is how much do we want to start, how much of our interpersonal relationships do we want to start losing, and how much can we start getting back? Because the nice thing about change, it doesn't have to be inevitable. That's going back what you're saying, if you're willing to get.
Well, part of what I'm thinking of here, Rick, is what I've seen in schools, since you teach and stuff, is that when kids come in to go to school, the teacher requires them to take their iPhones or whatever mobile phone they have and put it in a slot to be seen as present.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they're making a structural change to get people off the phone. And what I heard Friday from you was you don't do it that way, but you have a way of getting them off the phone and knowing each other, that it's not acceptable. But I think there's the problem with it, is we make it acceptable. But if families say, like James Dobson said, families used to eat together. Now they don't eat together. That's not a phone issue. That's a choice issue. Mm-hmm. That's a time management issue. And they said, but when they require, okay, at 6 o'clock, we're putting the food on the table. If you want to eat food, you'll be here at 6 o'clock. And you'll put your phones away and you'll converse. In other words, again, they're making structural changes to direct the person into a more functional way.
Yeah.
They reverse engineered it when they were young. That's when the porches started. They didn't have a porch. They didn't have any connection, and they felt isolated. And so they built porches to encourage people to come in. They then had air conditioning that moved people more in, but people still had gatherings, still had discussion groups, had book groups, all this that forced people again to interact in a cooler setting. Mm-hmm. Again, they made a structural change. And that's what we're really, at the end of all this, saying is it's so important for us to make the connection. And if we have to structurally change things for that to happen, just like Dobson did with everybody eat the meal at the same time in the same place and converse with each other so that you know who you're growing up with, then that's what you do. Because if you just kind of lackadaisically say, well, the refrigerator's open, when you get in the mood, get what you want, when you're through, clean up. And so people, what happened is kids would come in, they get bread and sandwich meat, make a sandwich and go back to their room, come out of their room, make a sandwich, go back in their room and eat the sandwich, mm-hmm. You see? And that caused all the problems. But making a conscious structural change makes all the difference in the world.
Exactly. Because, we got to remember, we're only 10 years into the smartphone phenomenon. And so we really don't even know what the true impacts are, and especially to the kids that are under 10 years old, and this is the only world they've known.
Yeah, yeah.
And so again, we have to depend on our parents and our teachers and those, help put some boundaries that allows for the opportunity for, again, interaction on a real-time basis with other human beings.
Yeah, and part of what we're talking about today, the patience of sticking with it.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not trying to say, talking to people face to face and slowing change is easy. It's not. It's hard. You've got to buckle up and get in it and stay in it and grind it out. And I think in the latter years, we've lost that. We're just looking for instantly we got money. Instantly we have a house. Instantly we have a car. Instantly we have friends. And it's just about snapping your finger. And I think there are people out there snapping, and nothing's happening. And there's a lot of anxiety and depression wrapped around this that we're seeing in people out there that don't seem to be moving forward or having the emotional satisfaction they thought they were going to have at this particular time in life.
And I hope everyone understands too what Roger's saying. What we do know and what we are seeing in the studies that are being done, especially with social media, of course, one of the popular terms is fake news from the right. But, in a way, I think you can rename Facebook Fakebook only for the reason that what you see posted out there is what people want you to see. And we know statistically and through the studies that have been done, people are getting on Facebook, and actually it does create a depression because they're seeing everybody else's life they think is perfect.
It's right. It's right.
They're on vacation, this beautiful location. They just bought the BMW.
Yeah.
They just got the new house, the new furniture.
And they don't see any of the effort and sacrifice they've had to make,
Well, or what they're also seeing is, they're seeing the kids being accepted to these great schools, but what they're not seeing, they're not seeing the financial strain that's being put on these families because they got the new BMW. Are they taking these vacations?
Yes, yeah.
They're not seeing that the kids are not speaking to the parents, even though,
Yeah, but
they're going to these great schools.
Anybody can pile together for one moment, one picture. And I love the phrase, Rick, airbrushing.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember when that came out, and what it was about was that people had blemishes. But the photographer had the ability to spray past that to where it went invisible. You didn't notice it. And so many families through Facebook and through other social media are airbrushing their life, or they're chasing after an airbrush life, which wasn't real to start with. It's a fakery that people are chasing after, and number one, you can't get it because it's not really there. And I very seldom have people, and I say, is life as good as your Facebook presentation? Mm-hmm. And I've yet for people to say, oh man, my life is just like that, and I don't break a sweat, and this goes good. And I'm like, really? Oh, okay. And life is so easy. Boy, once Facebook came in and I was able to get on social media, my life has gotten so much better. How much of that have you heard, Rick? I ain't heard that at all. It drives me crazy. That we have lost, and I think that's one of my big things lately, is the concept of hard. That somehow we've been airbrushing life as if all you've got to do is want it, and it's going to be there. Mm-hmm. And all you got to do is show up, and there is no sacrifice. And I was watching, again, I'm watching PBS last night. It seems like that's all I watch sometimes. But this person was doing a documentary on a person, a street person, and what came out, and you're watching it, and the kid looked great, and it was going along, and everything seemed, they were out there kind of being new hippies. And I was like, But then what happened was you started going, something's wrong here. Something's not clicking here. And what he found out was that the child was, which was now a young adult, schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way they could handle things, and so when they needed medication, the symptoms didn't go away. They needed medication. And so since they weren't willing to take medication, they were drinking or they were using street drugs. They were self-medicating. But, do you think other people knew that? No. Do you think that was out there, in public life? No. But as you watch and you see people all the time, street people or people working and whatever, and you don't know what kind of crud they're going through. And I've yet to meet anybody, maybe I've yet to meet a uncruddied person. that there isn't something cruddy going on in their life. There isn't something cruddy they're dealing with, And this guy's father, hardworking, going at it, doing everything he could, but he couldn't make his child well. And he couldn't make his child take the medication, and he couldn't get the child off the street. He didn't have that ability. With all his talent, with all his commitment, with really making that, he couldn't change that. And I think that's a hard thing. We kind of get a belief, if you want your marriage to work, it'll work. Well, sometimes you're the only one who wants it to work. And so it's not going to work. One person can't make a marriage. And so I see people who say, I tried for 30 years to get this to work. And I finally said, enough, I give up. And the people around the world don't see that. They just see you giving up. And so you're the bad guy. And they don't realize, no, I've got a release. I finally left this bad situation. And there's something that's hard too, is the investment of the porch, the investment of face-to-face. That's an investment. And being on the phone is little or no investment. It's a microsecond of fakery that you can dance with and create an illusion or buy an illusion. And I think one of the things we're saying is, don't do that. I can remember when I was teaching Sunday school years ago, and the first thing my wife said to me was, don't get up there and act like we're perfect. Don't get up there and tell people we got it all together. Don't get up there and airbrush our life. If you're going to mention us, mention it's tough. If you're going to mention us, mention we're working at it. And mention also, we don't have the answers. We don't have all the answers. And I think that was just great advice. And I think people appreciated that. Walking in and saying, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. We're here to connect. And I hope this is worth something to you. If it is, come back. If it's not, I get it. But people get into, I'm join this club. I go to this club. I do this club. I'm part of this group. And they never engage. They show up. There's a difference between showing up and being engaged. There's not showing up, then there's showing up, and then there's being engaged. And every step is hard and takes work.
And, I like, that advice of the Sunday school classroom, because people won't have trust in other people if they think there's something fake or false about whatever that persona is. And when you share that kind of information, again, I don't know when you work with couples, if it comes up, but when I got into the counseling arena,
Uh-huh.
that was one of my, and it was funny you mentioned that about being divorced and wondering if they would take you. I went to Liberty, just like you went to New Orleans. Part of it was driven because some of these other Baptist seminaries, you could make an application and it was a page long, but if you were divorced, you had to write a 20-page thesis.
I always thought if you were divorced, that's done.
Yeah.
There's no way you get in. But when I went there, it was different.
Yeah, and so
that made it, and I never had to deal with that, or well, within my own mind, I had to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as whether I was in the class, going to graduate, that was never an issue.
So then, we finished seminary, we get into counseling practice. I do full disclosure, and when couples come in for work, I let them know that I have been divorced. And the neat thing about it is, not one, I don't think I've ever had a couple that says, "Oh, well, then we can't work with you."
Yeah.
I the opposite. Oh, so you do understand what it's like to go through these type of challenges.
Yeah.
And so again, when people know that you have walked the same walk, either they're talking about divorce or they want to prevent divorce, but that's how you connect with people is let them know the wounds that you have endured during life and that you have and do understand what it's like to walk their walk sometimes. We're not going to be able to connect with everybody on every wound, but you're right. We all have major wounds, and I'm talking about the emotional wounds and the spiritual wounds.
Right.
And when people understand that, they will connect with you on a level that's much deeper instead of thinking that they have to be a certain way because they think you're a certain way.
Rick, one of the things, and boy, I think you brought it up really great, is the idea that people in our audience need to think about one big question, and that is, am I connectable with?
Mm-hmm.
That is a big issue. You really have to check yourself. Oh, I don't seem to have any friends. I don't seem people care. Well, the first thing I ask is, are you connectable? Do you place yourself in a way to connect? And I think of probably Dale Carnegie, who said, if you want to make friends, first be a friend.
Right.
And I love that. Like, wow, there it is. It's easy to sit there and say, I want a friend. You don't cry about it. And as you go through all that, I want a friend. But I'm not willing to go out there. I want to get it. I don't want to give it. And boy, it's that dynamic out there that makes all the difference in the world. And people aren't just standing out saying, hey, I'm willing to be a friend. It comes at being a friend with anybody at any level, at any age, is an investment. You've got to step out. You've got to show up. You've got to make that connection. And boy, that is very rough. And sometimes it doesn't work. You can be connected. And there's some people that don't want to connect with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I think about in therapy. You come in there and you can say, this is my background. And people say, fine, we're just here to help us out. We want to make the connection. We feel you're connectable with.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that as more important in therapy and in life than people who come in and say, I went to a therapist for 10 times and nothing happened. And I said, well, how did you connect with the therapist? Well, I didn't think much of them. I went, and you paid them money every week and you had no connection. And they said, well, that just didn't work out for me. And I said, boy, you might as well just stop by the restroom before you went into therapy and take your money and put it in the toilet and flush it than to act like you're paying money and getting therapy. Because you got it for therapy to work. I found, you can support me or not on this, but there is no therapy without emotional connection.
100% correct. That therapy is a therapeutic relationship. The big word right there is relationship.
Uh-huh.
And once again, there are going to be clients that we will not connect with. That's okay. And the good thing about life is that's okay. They'll find. I remember one time years ago, I could tell that I was struggling with a client, and they were honest with me and said, you know what, I really need more of a doctor feel. And because that's not my style, and I appreciated them sharing that with them. I said, well, you know, that's not me, so I'm not going to be able to do that with you. So maybe we need to find you a Dr. Phil. But they need somebody.
And what's funny here is I'm more like
You're
a Dr. Phil.
That's exactly right.
and that's why Rick and I worked well together, is because we're both not here to be Dr. Phil. We're just trying to be who, you know, I'm me, he's him. We're similar but different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what friendship is about.
Exactly.
You know, it's not about we all, like you said with therapy, it is, you know, oh, you want Dr. Phil? Well, let me pull that out.
Yeah. Because then I'd be fake.
Yes.
Yeah.
But don't you know people that do that? They are good at fakery.
Mm-hmm.
They're so good at fakery. I can fake that. You want a Dr. Phil? Okay. I'll watch TV. I'll see how he does it. And I'll repeat it here and take your money. What? You know, and I think people do that in therapy. I think people do that in regular work, that they look at what they feel like the work environment wants, and they show up as that. And basically they look back and say, I was faking it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a connection there. And then there's other people, I say, that when it gets time for them to retire from work, they're crying, whether they're male or female, they're sobbing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm leaving a piece of my family here. I'm like, wow, there it is. That's the way it ought to be. That's the way it was meant to be. But, you know, people don't get into that, sadly.
So
anything on your?
Well, yeah, Gail just joined, and she's saying it's a yin and a yang type situation, and that's what life is. Yeah, we have to have the light if we're going to have the dark. We got to have the cold if we're going to have the hot, and sometimes we just have to again realize that in life that you know, a lot of people, we're talking about the flu right now and how bad it is. And
scary bad.
But when you get sick like that, you know, when I had that stomach bug right at the end of December, you appreciate feeling good so much more when you
can hold down food.
Yeah.
Man, that's a woohoo! That's a bumper moment. But you know, and and I think, you know, even talking to my sister on this one, I think when you think about life, Rick, and interacting with people and doing the things you do, whether it's at church or at work or wherever, there is an ebb and a flow with it. And that there are people, you know, that again, you just don't walk into anyways, and I get it, and it works, and everybody loves me. I've never seen that. It's you come in and you look at how it ebbs and flows, and you work with and contribute and connect to that ebb and flow. Magic things happen. It's just amazing how that works.
Yep. And, you know, you were talking about Carnegie, and of course, that is one of his big things also, and how to win friends and influence people is, and as we started off the discussion, are we getting to an age, when I talk about an age, are we getting to a time where people are becoming more self-centered because of the technology, and are we more about self when in fact the psychology of relationships teaches just the opposite? It has to be, are you interested in another person? And if you are, that means you learn about them, you ask about them, you get to know them, and then you'll be amazed as to what kind of relationships these relationships get into this self-absorption of being on our phone or Facebook or whatever. That's where we're losing a lot of this opportunity.
Well, I think social media facilitates isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And on the pendulum of life, we have swung over to isolation. And I think we're having people come out like Dale Carnegie, Zig Ziglar, Brene Brown,
Mm-hmm.
who are saying, woo-hoo-hoo, too much. No, that's not going to work. That's a detriment. You got to have to reel it back in, reel in the isolation. and I can remember that in the 70s, man, it was everything to do about isolation. And that was highly encouraged and highly preached. That was way before there was any social media. But people were saying, boy, if people don't get with you, go out in the desert and be by yourself. It'll be all good. And what they found is it's not that good. It's not. Very few people operate well in isolation. And as you've said, studies have shown that being isolated is really detrimental. I love just recently they came out with a study that it was down the list of longevity. Okay, they did a study on the people who live the longest, and drinking and eating and smoking were like down the list. They weren't the major contributors of death. What the major contributor of people who live longer were their social connection, their ability to connect with other people. That was such a wake-up call. That research thing was just a wake-up call of do not isolate, connect. It's hard. Do it. But people join a gym and they look at their diet and they go through all the changes and they're hoping that's going to work. And in truth, it doesn't. Healthy people die. That's what's wild. It's funny how people in perfect health one day they just don't wake up. It's like, what? And you hear people say they were in great physical condition. They were eating well. They had never smoked in their life, and they died. And then I'm always reminded of George Burns, who would sit there with a big old stogie, and lived into the 90s, I think. It's like he just said, well, it hadn't killed me yet. I'm going to and I like that. I'm going to do it. See?
Well, and what we know as we close up is we know that Brene Brown, actually, that's her kind of new focus right now is isolation, and that's what.
Yes, I love, and boy, I tell you, when I hear Brene Brown, it's like preaching to the choir. I'm like, amen, sister. I am with you on that. I see what you're saying. She is about connection, not division. And we have just grown up in a culture of divisiveness, dividing, you against them, us against them, us against them, us against them. Wow. And that is tiring, and it has had little or no payoff.
And we know that the United Kingdom has recently created a new position, and this is not a joke. It's a minister of loneliness. They're seeing the impact of isolation over there, and what we need to do. So as we close up today, if we could encourage you on anything, maybe this will be a challenge to go out there and create and connect some interpersonal relationships back on the face-to-face. I don't want to say, there's a hypocrisy here because, for us, the Facebook Live is, I hope we're using the technology in the right way in being able to have these type of discussions and disseminate some information in a way that was not available 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But I'm going to challenge myself to try to limit screen time and maybe start making some more face-to-face connections. I just pulled up when they asked Steve Jobs back in 2010, do your kids use the iPod, iPad, or iPhone? iPad. He said, no, actually, we don't allow the iPad in the home. Now, here's Steve Jobs saying that's like the president of Ford said, no, we don't drive cars.
We don't drive a car. We don't let our kids drive cars.
We think it's too dangerous for them, in effect. The reason the author said the reason why he said that was because he recognized just how addictive the iPad was as a vehicle for delivering things to people. That once you had the iPad in front of you, or when you took it away from the kids, you'd always have access to the platforms that were very addictive, and that's hard to resist. So where his kids were very well adapted, well adjusted, may not have been prime targets for, say, substance abuse, like everyone else, are susceptible to the charms of something like an iPad and what it delivers. So not real deep, but but I think we've heard these stories, but that's why Jobs said it is because of the addictive nature of iPads. And guys, if you have youngsters that have grown up with screens, just try to take it away from them and see what happens. I do know that I've read some stuff that the addictiveness of that is the same as trying to take a heroin addict off heroin. And look it up. Like, don't ever believe everything we say. Look it up.
No, believe everything we say.
Well, what I mean by that is do some research and see how addictive screen time is for our kids, and just try that one day. Try to take the screen time away and tell your kids, we're going to have a Saturday where we have no screen time, or a Sunday with no screen time, and just see if you see some addictive behavior that goes off that. And just something to be thinking about. And we can pick it up again next Tuesday a little bit as we continue some of these discussions. And Roger, anything else you got before we?
I think that's a good place to say, see you on the porch next week.
All right. So we'll see.
And if you have something you're interested in, let us know. And we'll be sure to cover that at the porch the next time we sit down.
Exactly. Thanks, Roger. All right. And we'll see everybody on Tuesday. Guys.
Now we've gone totally tech here.